Okay, we are back with another episode of Okay and listen, we know I've been using this podcast to tell all my business. So of course, I got to tell my business about my health as well, which went off the rails and we'll get into that later. But I want to introduce my guest. Okay, listen, she is a HBCU grad, okay, a communications girly like me, and from my old stomping grounds, the DMV. I got my girl Lauren Kornegay. How are you, boo?
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, if you don't know who Lauren is, on top of all of the things I just named, she is the founder of Endo Black. It is a nonprofit organization and it has a large social media presence. And so she's here today to talk about her organization and endometriosis with Black women. Uh, this is a little tricky space for me. Last year, my body started to fail me, and I did not know what was happening. And I'm sure actually you can relate because you kind of had a similar story just a few years back. So tell me about your journey with endometriosis.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that. 2011, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. I actually attended Morgan State University. I had some difficulties while attending the university that actually opened my eyes to a lot of different things that I did not understand. I ended up visiting an OBGYN who asked me how my cycles were. I shared with her that my cycles were interesting. My left knee would hurt when my period came on, my right knee would hurt when my period went off. And she was the first person that said that that was not a normal situation for me. So we moved forward with getting a diagnosis of endometriosis. And I thought that that was just like, okay, I have the diagnosis, I can continue with my life. And that just was not the case. I ended up back in the hospital probably about 6 to 7 months right after getting that diagnosis. I ended up passing out several times and I ended up having a cyst ruptured, which made me take a closer look at my diagnosis and recognizing that this was such a big, big deal. And it needs to be more awareness about it. So I just tried to figure out, and I seemed very confused by what was already on social media, what was on the internet. It wasn't something where I was able to get that information and understand it. It just wasn't, I guess, digestible for me at the time. So I was very confused about endometriosis and what that meant for my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's actually crazy that you talk about the knee thing because I've always had horrible knees, but I didn't even know that that could be a ailment of endometriosis. See, when I moved from the DMV to Columbus, I
Mhm.
had always felt like anytime I was stressed, my period would kind of dictate those things. So I just kind of always thought like, oh, I'm under high stress. The job was very stressful for me when I moved to Columbus. So I thought, oh, okay, my body is just kind of responding
Mhm.
to those things. And so I knew I had a cyst. I
Mhm.
did a endorsement deal with a fibroids doctor. And so I went and got an ultrasound and I found out I had a cyst. They kind of, oh, it's not a big deal. Cysts come and go.
Mhm.
It won't be, anything to worry about. Now, maybe in a few months, if it's still there,
Right.
no problem. So when I first started having issues, I kind of felt like, oh, maybe it's the cyst. I know sometimes they get removed.
Mhm.
But to your point, the advocacy
Mhm.
um, of this type of stuff, because when I went to the doctor, that was the first time I ever felt like the medical system failed me. And I
Mhm.
feel like Black women talk about this a lot when it comes to birth. But in my own experiences, I never really felt like the medical system failed me other than being fat. Because, listen, you break your pinky and they're like, oh, you're fat. You got to lose weight.
Blame that
Maybe
on
if you lost weight, your finger wouldn't be broke. But other than that, I never really felt lost. Right. And so I go to this doctor, and she was a young white doctor. I could tell she was really fresh.
Mhm.
And, I get this cyst, and they're telling me, like, okay, it's big. You can kind of do what you want to do. Now, luckily, the ultrasound tech had told me at the time that, cysts can rupture.
Right.
Like in your experience. And he was like, it's really big. You probably would want to get that
Removed.
removed. And so I was like, okay, because it started to make me feel uncomfortable. So I'm like, okay, cool.
Mhm.
Well, not only do we end up getting it removed, It was 10 centimeters, and it was hanging off of my fallopian tube.
Mm,
So, it was a lot larger than what they saw on the ultrasounds, but also when my doctor opened me up, that's when she found out that I had endometriosis as well.
mm,
Now before I got that cyst removed, some of the symptoms that I had were there was certain points that I couldn't get out of bed. Couldn't get out of bed. I was cramping so bad. There were times that, like, if I would sit up, I would I would feel like I was going to pass out,
yep.
get super nauseous.
Mhm,
And again, I had always felt like, when I was stressed out, my period kinda dictated that. And
mhm.
so I thought like, "Oh, it's just normal," or, but to your point, if doctors had taken me more seriously
Exactly.
prior this experience, there could have been more conversations
Mhm,
because I've always had a heavy period. I
mhm.
just thought maybe I'm a bigger girl,
That's just how
maybe
things are.
I'm so I
Mhm,
had some incidents in college where, I had very heavy bleeding and I went to get ultrasounds, they're like, "You're good." You know what I mean? No one even tried to investigate some of these things. So then when I get this cyst removed, not only does she say, "Hey, it was a lot larger than we thought," but
mhm.
they're like, "We know you have PCOS and we know you have endometriosis." And she was like, "I thought about removing it, but it was on your bladder
Right,
and on your ovaries." And she was like, "I would have hated for you to wake up and needed a colostomy bag because we damaged your bladder in a surgery we weren't authorized to do."
right.
And so I was grateful for that because I'd have been pissed. But
Yeah.
obviously, I still have endometriosis, right? That's something that I unfortunately still have on my body. And so like now I finally feel like I have so many answers because
Mhm.
there's been so many things over the time. And I actually went to y'all's website
Okay.
because y'all have a lot of resources. So here are some of the symptoms that people could have. And some of these things I didn't even think about. So painful periods, obviously, painful bowel movements, urination,
Mhm,
excessive bleeding, infertility. But these were the ones that kind of got me. You may experience diarrhea,
mhm,
constipation, bloating, vomiting, nausea, especially during your periods. Other symptoms could be what looks like allergies,
mhm,
brain fog, mood swings, migraines, fatigue, insomnia,
mhm.
anxiety, night sweats, shortness of breath, chest pain, low back pain, feeling cold, breast pain. I mean, God damn it, they have failed us. I
No,
mean,
seriously, seriously. The list goes on, honestly. It continues to grow. So when you said heavy bleeding, I was like, endometriosis, right? So that's the first thing
mhm,
I thought of. And then you talk about stress. We attribute a lot of the stuff that we go through with stress, right? But the truth of the matter is stress does impact our health a lot. So those things may have already been happening, but the stress may have added to it. And with all of these symptoms, people don't talk about those symptoms. The main symptoms for endometriosis is pain. And it's like you may not
mhm,
have someone who goes through pain all the time, you know?
right,
And how do I measure my pain against someone else's when I only feel my pain? I could say my
mhm,
pain is 5, but to another person, the pain could be 15, right? So like
right,
we're saying, "Oh, we're painful." Girl, I don't have time to be in pain. I gotta go to work.
hello,
Like, so my pain may not be that intense, but the truth of the matter is there are so many symptoms and there needs to be more research. We have to continue doing more research
absolutely.
because we're not going to be able to do that. And you mentioned the weight thing. The first thing that people always want to go to is you need to lose more weight. You need Okay, sorry, that's not it. Okay, ma'am, that's not necessarily the situation.
Yeah.
After I lose weight, after I gain weight, after I change my eating, what's next? It doesn't
Mhm.
cure me. So, like, that doesn't solve anything. It is good to eat a certain type of meal or certain type of foods, but at the same time, it's like you also don't give me a guide. After I was diagnosed, and I still love that doctor because she was the one who took the time to actually diagnose me. But there was
Yeah.
no rule book. It was like, you have endo. Good luck. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, do I need to eat certain foods? What does this mean about pregnancy? What does this look like?" And there was no information, nothing. So, like, literally from 2011 until now, I have developed different types of tools that I use and mechanisms that I use, but our bodies, of course, they change. The older you get, they change. So every time I
Yeah.
get something, I have to change with my body. It's like, dang,
Right.
you keeping up with me. I'm trying to keep up with you. But honestly, it's like we really have to go back to those symptoms and recognizing how important it is for people to be educated on the symptoms because we have young girls who are unfortunately having brain fog, having migraines, vomiting, all of these type of symptoms, and we have no idea that that's the situation at hand, and it's really unfortunate. So we want to make sure that we continue to do that and keep it going. But all in all, I just think it's really important, and I'm so glad that you got the accurate diagnosis. It is unfortunate that they didn't notice that to begin with, and that happens quite often where people don't notice the two. They may say, "Oh, PCOS. Oh, you have fibroids." They don't look around. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a twofold with it because you are supposed to have only endo specialists operate on endometriosis. And the
Mhm.
doctor was right in saying I didn't want to mess anything up because that's accurate. But at the same time, it's just really unfortunate because is there anyone you can refer me to? Is there anyone that I can get more assistance with and I can get more help with? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's just so unfortunate because in full transparency, before I got the cyst removed,
mhm,
I switched doctors
mhm,
because I didn't like the fact
mhm,
someone told me, they were like, Leah, do you really want somebody cutting you open who makes you feel indifferent? And I was like, you know what? You damn right. I'm about to go find somebody else. Because the first doctor I had was so lackadaisical.
mhm,
And birth control was the first option. And I'm sorry, everybody does not want to be on birth control. Everybody doesn't want to put their body through a hormonal
yeah,
shift to try to do that.
yeah,
And, I have endometriosis and PCOS, which,
mhm,
technically speaking, are the top two ailments that cause infertility for women, right?
exactly.
So for me, birth control is not really an option. It's not something that I'm willing to try
Mhm,
in order to try to regulate my body. But you're right. You get this diagnosis, and then it's like, do you want birth control? Well, if not, good luck. Best of luck. Like you just gonna have to figure it out. Go
mhm,
on and cramp, girl. Going on and bleed heavy because that's just what it is. And
yeah,
it's so unfortunate because I really felt like during that time before I got the cyst removed
mhm,
that my body was failing me. Like
yeah,
I never had felt so out of control of
yeah,
my bodily function. And it really scared the hell out of me.
yeah,
Because again, as we're getting older, as we're transitioning, you're like
mhm,
trying to figure out just the new realms of how your body works.
yeah.
But on top of that, then, like, girl, there was a point I was having like 2 periods a month
Yep.
and they were like exactly the same, like all the cravings, all the things just
Mhm,
twice within a month. The passing out scared me. And
mhm,
I'm sure you can relate to that. Like, I
mhm,
felt like I couldn't even sit up by myself. I'm in a city that I just moved to start this job. The job is not going how I thought. And
mhm,
then I can't even get out of bed.
yeah.
And then I got to go get on the radio and be like, it's power to seven. You know what I mean? And act like
Keep
this
it active,
person,
everything is fine.
but I'm at home, like barely wanting to move.
Yeah.
Like, I remember calling a homegirl because she had told me she had cysts before.
Mhm,
And it was one of them times that I felt like I was gonna pass out. And I said, "Hey sis, I was just calling to talk about cysts. You told me you had cysts before, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Hey, um, I just feel like I'm about to pass out, I'm about to throw up, and I can't move." And
yeah.
she was like, "Oh, girl, no, wait, like that wasn't my experience. I don't know, sis." And I'm like, which, the things that the PCOS didn't check, the endometriosis did.
Yep.
Um, and so I was just like, the answers, because and let's be clear, I
Mhm.
would have never been diagnosed with either had I not been cut open.
Honestly.
It
Honestly.
would it would have I'm 30.
Yeah.
I never got the diagnosis. And I had a dermatologist tell me one time, he was like, I'm shocked that no one's even tried to uh, you know, tell you that you have PCOS. You have like all the things that check off the boxes.
Yeah.
And then all the things that didn't check off the boxes, endometriosis did. And nobody thought to search further, to look for answers.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's hella frustrating because I feel like you leave those appointments like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? Especially if you don't want to take birth control.
And it's like, what's my next step? Like, what am I doing after that? So I get you. I want to go back to the birth control comment because I think it's really important. I was on birth control, but that was when I was in college, right?
Mm,
Um, College is completely different. Age is completely different. What birth control allowed me to experience in college is not the same as an adult, right? So it's like you do have some people that were put on birth control, but they decided to be on birth control. They had multiple options and they understood their options. They weren't just forced on it. Um, and that helped them through that period, right? But I tried to circle back and get back on birth control at an older age. And when I tell you it was not the same experience for me, I think I was about 34 years old trying to get back on birth control. It just was terrible. I ended up back in the hospital because I was cramping so bad. And I thought that the experience that I had in college would be similar to the experience I had as a 34-year-old on Depo, which is the shot that you get about, I think it's a shot you get every 3 months. You know, when your life is moving fast, you just want to
yeah.
be able to get through it. And I was like, this not gonna work. I'm gonna have to find
Right.
something else. And it's just really unfortunate that people are not providing people all of the options, right? If you're
Yeah.
saying birth control or hysterectomy or
Mm,
holistic approaches, or we can look at this, we can look at this. You give us all the options, and someone chooses birth control, they choose hysterectomy, they chose holistic approaches. That's perfectly fine. Do your thing, girl. You know what I'm saying? But if you're
yeah.
being told you only have one option, that's just not fair and it's not accurate.
Yeah.
It's not true. And then 34, 35 was the time I felt like my life was spiraling because I felt like my
Mm,
body was failing me. And again,
yep.
I never felt like that. And I had been diagnosed in 2011. I knew I had endo. I thought I had it a little,
Figured out.
figured out. Mind you, I have a whole
Yeah.
nonprofit that focuses on endometriosis on Black women. And I thought I just had it figured out. And 34 hit me like a ton of bricks. It was
Mm,
the food I was struggling with. It was
yeah.
me being able to just like focus. I realized that the food that I was eating, and people will say, you need a vegan diet, you need to be vegan. That's not always true. So
Yeah.
for those who are not aware, black beans, when you have like vegan hamburgers, that's a black bean base. Black beans has soy, that's estrogen base. Estrogen and endometriosis, honey, flare up
Mm,
immediately, right? So you're telling people to do a vegan diet. It's not as simple as people make it seem. And then you don't
yeah.
recognize the type of food you may be eating. You may have like kale and spinach has like vitamin K. You have other foods that have different things. 2010, I was, well, sometimes I diagnose myself, so don't judge me because I don't have the time to go to the doctors. But I recognized that I had allergies and I could not understand why I was allergic to lemons, limes, mangoes, pineapples. And it just started all at different times from 2010 all the way up until like 2016. All of these allergies were popping up out of nowhere. So in 2017, I started to travel internationally. I accidentally had a lime in my drink. Finished
Mm,
the drink, didn't even notice the lime until the end of the drink. Normally, my face would have been puffed up, my eyes would have been puffed up, my tongue would have been itching. I was perfectly fine. It happened
mm.
again. I went to Cuba. It kept happening when I traveled internationally, and I said, "It's the food."
They trying to kill us,
Yeah, it's
girl.
the pesticides in the food. So it's not that I'm allergic to the fruit. I'm allergic to the spray, the pesticide that is being sprayed on it so that it can last longer in stores, right? So just
Mhm.
understanding that. And we can eat certain things depending on where the fruit is grown. Like Maryland has a strawberry farm. I don't have an issue with actually going to the farm and getting those strawberries because I would be perfectly fine eating them. But if you don't have access to like those fresh fruits, you will have most likely a reaction if you are struggling with that type of thing. And that's why one of the symptoms is having allergies. You think that these are allergies where you're sneezing, not recognizing these are symptoms from the endometriosis. We don't correlate those two.
Mm, wow.
So it's just really, really impactful and really interesting because as I got older, 34, I really, really locked in. I started to go to a nutritionist. But
Mm.
when I tell you, it's so sad. I cut back on macaroni and cheese, which was my favorite. My favorite,
Listen,
but the dairy triggers something for me. And it may
yeah.
trigger something for everybody, right? So I'm not here to tell anybody to not eat certain things because I still eat red meat. I still have steak. I don't have an issue with that. It's in moderation for me, but it got to a point that the sugar and the dairy was so bad for me. I literally remember waking up and I have blinds in my bedroom, a big window. The sun was shining through the blinds. I woke up, opened my eyes, instant migraine. When I tell you
Mm,
rolled out the bed, crawled to the toilet to throw up because I could not manage. So just recognizing that that was going on for almost a full year for me. A full year,
mm,
I said, I need to lock in and figure out what's happening. I could not work. I could not do anything successful. And I just felt like I was losing a bad battle. So like I really felt like my body was failing me. And then you mentioned the diagnosis about um, people not telling you, like, and that's why it's so critical for us to know the symptoms as well as symptoms of PCOS, right? There's an
mhm,
organization called PCOS Challenge. They do amazing work. They provide resources as well as education on this type of stuff. And it's just like really, really critical because most of the women have PCOS. May have endo, or they may have fibroids, or they may have anomyosis. Unfortunately, it's kind of locked in where they are very much correlated with each other. Um,
mhm,
or unfortunately, as of right now, the American College of OBGYN has listed laparoscopic surgery as the golden procedure to diagnose endo. But
mm,
you can get an MRI, you can get a pelvic exam, you can get an ultrasound. If you're having another surgery, people have been diagnosed with colonoscopies. Not saying to do that necessarily, but if you are looking for a non invasive way of getting a diagnosis and you have multiple symptoms of endometriosis, I will look that direction first
yeah,
versus actually cutting you open and doing that because that also brings on different things as well. So,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too. This last year, I have had to have a coming to Jesus moment
mhm,
with my diet because when I am not eating a lot of sugar, not eating a lot of carbs, eating a very protein heavy diet, I find myself feeling 25,000 times better.
yeah,
And I was talking to my OBGYN and I told her, listen, I'm not doing birth control, but I am going to get my life. It's just
right.
I had to have a little funeral in my head with what my life was gonna be because I
Like
enjoy
the
food. I
over.
enjoy the experiences. But it is
Yeah,
a sad reality that either I'm going to operate in my body
yeah,
in a way that's gonna make my life comfortable to live, or
mhm,
I'm gonna eat shit and I'm gonna
yeah,
feel like shit for the
yeah,
rest of my life. I don't, it was a hard thing for me to kind of reckon with the
mhm,
last year. So I told myself last year, okay, have your fun because in 2025, we cannot feel the way we felt in 2024 and 2023.
yeah,
Because, like you said, you feel like you're gonna fucking die.
yeah,
Like, I remember being like, am I just gonna pass out and not wake up? Like, is somebody gonna have to call my family and tell them to come get my body up here because I
yeah,
don't know what the hell is going on?
yep,
It feels insane at
yeah,
times. And so I was just like, I wish somebody would have told me what this experience was like. And I wish that I would have known more. And then also, you kind of talked about this, but advocacy. What are
mhm,
your tips for Black women who are having some symptoms,
mhm,
but they are not being heard or there are not opportunities for them to explore? How do people advocate for themselves? Because I'm not going to lie, I felt a little lost with the first doctor I had. I felt a little overlooked. I felt frustrated because birth control was the only option she was throwing at me. So, what
yeah.
would you suggest for women to advocate for themselves so they're not feeling like they're unseen in their own health journey?
Yeah, Leah, you did a good job, first of all. Like, you are a true
Thank you.
advocate for yourself because, one, recognizing that a doctor is saying something that you don't like is one thing, but having the courage to leave that doctor, find a new doctor, and start all over, that's a big step in itself, right? And people have
Yeah,
to, that is the first step, right? It's just recognizing that you don't like what this doctor is saying because really a doctor is supposed to be shared making decision model. It should be a
yeah,
collective decision together where the patient and the doctor are on the same page and they're moving forward together. Not this is all you got.
yeah,
That's not how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be a team and we're supposed to work together. So definitely just making sure that you're standing up for yourself. That's the biggest first step, right? Recognizing
yeah.
you feel uncomfortable and you don't like something. But then another thing is doing your research, right? So that means
Mhm.
doing your research on the doctors that you're trying to go to, doing that research, looking at those reviews. And unfortunately, like I mentioned, like endo specialists and OBGYNs are not the same thing. So sometimes it gets a little difficult, but what I will say is that you do your research on that OBGYN, you connect with them, you realize, okay, I really vibe with this OBGYN, and then you start the conversation about endometriosis, right? And a lot of times, depending on if you're looking at a doctor's bio, it may actually talk about specialty endometriosis, specialty fertility. It will talk on those things, specialty PCOS, fibroids. You want doctors that have these type of specialties and that are a little bit more well known about these things because you're already trying to figure things out yourself. So I talk about research. You research your doctor, but now you have to research endometriosis also because how are you being impacted? And on our website, we have a resource tab on our website, endoblack.org. Everybody go there. There's an endometriosis symptom tracker. You go to that tracker and you track off those lists. You take that tracker to your doctor and say, these are the symptoms that I'm dealing with. This looks very much like endometriosis. What is my next step? How do I get the help that I need? What are your suggestions? What are your recommendations? There's also a one pager of a question list that we partner with blackdoctor.org to create. They provided some questions for us. We just put it on the toolkit. And another question is like, what are some type of ways I can get diagnosed with endometriosis non-invasively, right? Because we want to have these
Right.
conversations about non-invasive stuff first before we just
Yes.
dive into a surgery. One, it is timely. We gotta go to
Costly?
costly, the financial burden, and then to have somebody take care of you after the surgery. So like
Baby.
make sure that you got it together before you step. The research is the critical part. So you're researching your doctor, you're researching endometriosis, and your next step is researching yourself. Like, and I don't tell everybody to do this because everybody isn't equipped to do this, but at some point I sat with my pain, right? I sat with my pain because I needed to figure out what type of pain I was feeling. Is this pain in my knee? Is this a sharp pain? Is this lower abdomen pain? Am I having
That's
chest
good.
issues, right? Because when I'm trying to describe this to the doctor, I don't know how to describe it. It's like when your car is making noises and you take your car to the shop, you like, my car is making a weird noise. Well, what type of noise is it making? So we have to be
Yeah.
specific with it so that the doctor that we trust can actually help us get the help that we need. So sitting with that pain, recognizing, okay, well, I just ate this food and I feel this way after eating it. Maybe I shouldn't eat this food anymore, right? So just recognizing those type of things. Also, we talked about the symptom tracker, but a big step is talking to your family members, right?
Mm.
Have family. You have aunties, you may have moms, sisters, cousins, dads, grandparents, talking to that inner family, and distant family. Because the truth of the matter is, my cousins have PCOS. I have several cousins with PCOS. I have several cousins with endo. I have several cousins with fibroids. I have several cousins who've had miscarriages. We never had those conversations before I got
Come
diagnosed
on.
endometriosis, right? And I know
Yeah,
it's a sensitive topic, especially in the Black community, and parents and older people may feel like that's none of your business. But the truth is,
it
it,
is.
it's closely related. There is research that talks about how there is a genetic marking between the 3 or 4 disorders that I've named already, right? So if there's genetic markings of that, we have to understand that there is a possibility that my child will have one of these disorders.
Right.
If I know that now, I could communicate, I could see how her periods are at 13, 14. I say, that's not normal. Let's have a conversation with the doctor. Now we don't
Yeah.
have to wait until we're 30 years old or until we're in college by ourselves to get an accurate diagnosis. We don't have to wait to pass out to get someone to listen to us. You know what I'm
Come
saying?
on.
So, like all of those things, it's really the research on your doctor, the research on your own body, the research on endo, and now you got to research your own family. And I know it's not a comfortable thing to do, but those are the beginning steps of how you advocate for yourself. And that's how you keep it moving. Because now I can go to my doctor and say, I have these symptoms. I trust you. I have these symptoms. I looked at how my pain feels, and my cousins have endo. What we gonna do?
Yeah.
So it
Oh,
those
that's real good.
steps.
Yeah, that's really good. Also on your website, you said on average, it may take 6 to 10 years to be diagnosed for an African American woman
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and 11 to 15 years
Mm-hmm.
for Black women.
Mm-hmm.
Women of color, 6 to 10. Us, 11 to 15.
Yeah.
And when I even think back to when I first started having issues with my period, which
Mhm.
is when I was in college, 2013. Yeah, that's about accurate because I
Yep,
didn't get diagnosed until what, 2024?
yep,
So yeah, 11 years for me. So
mm,
literally, I fall within that statistic.
yep,
So there's a lot of missing pieces when it comes to women's health and then more particularly Black women's health.
right.
Um, and I think you're right. The conversations start with organizations like yours. It starts with us being more vocal about this. And this is why I wanted to make sure that on my podcast, when I was talking about my life, I had to have the uncomfortable conversations about my health and the journeys that I've been on. So I appreciate you so much for coming on the pod, for sharing your story.
Mhm.
If people want to connect with your amazing organization, hear more about what you do, or just get more information about the services that you guys provide, where can they go, Lauren?
They can go to endoblack.org. You can look for us anywhere, honestly. Type in Endo Black. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Pinterest. We're on YouTube. We just have so many resources. We're trying to do a little bit better in getting access to people everywhere. We're doing a lot of work. We are also partnering with George Mason University to do research. One of the
Come
papers that
on.
we just did was actually published at the beginning of this month. So we're super excited about that.
Oh,
We have so much going on. We have a lot of research and we just need people to think outside of the box in doing research, right? When you're doing research, don't do research about me without me. So don't do
mm,
research and think that you are going to talk about Black women or Black women with endometriosis or Black women with PCOS, right? Without including the community members in on that. You have to
and that,
include this.
yeah.
And the more research we get, the more numbers we get, the more accuracy we get, right? And the more
Hmm.
funding we will get. There's an Endometriosis Care Act. Please definitely check that out. It's really, really, really critical to get that information out. But we are on all platforms you can think of. We have a private Facebook group where people are able to join and just get advice, talk to each other. Because one thing we know is that community is really, really important to Black people and we
Yes.
have to share these resources with each other and also share our experiences. The truth of the matter is, I can talk to people in my family, but if they don't have endo, they're not going to understand. And I'm not mad at them for not understanding, but you have to find your endo tribe. So join
Yeah.
the Endo Black community. Come on, we're open, we're welcoming everybody.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for the work that you have done and that you're doing for this community because, as you said, it really is important to have sisterhood in this journey. It can feel very isolating and you can feel very, very crazy. So I appreciate you for all the work that you are doing and stopping by the podcast, Lauren.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Queen. Well, have an amazing day. And listen, make sure you subscribe